Hey everybody, today we're going to rebuild the brake booster on the Datsun 260Z. I got a booster rebuild kit from Z-Car Depot, so we'll pull it apart and rebuild it. So let's see how it goes. Here's the kit that came from Z-Car Depot. So the kit comes with a set of instructions. It has a lot of detail on the parts in it and the booster assembly. There's a piece of paper here that talks about the poppet valve and sending it back to the supplier. It looks like some of these parts are in the kit, so I'm not sure if this is something I'll have to do. Once we get into it, we'll find out. Packet of grease, the main diaphragm for the booster, so looks pretty nice. The booster I have has a lot of brake fluid in it, and I did a vacuum test on it, and there's no it doesn't do anything. There's no vacuum at all that pulls down on it, so it's clearly bad. Dust boot. This is the piece that goes for the plunger inside. I think this is the piece that tends to drop out of these boosters, and people have brake problems when it falls out. So there's that brake disc, a felt pad, a regular Veralip, like a lip type seal for the booster, and then also this seal here. So that's everything that's in the kit. Here's the booster. You can see it's in pretty rough shape. It needs to be cleaned up. You can see where all the brake fluid is leaking down and eating the paint off, but it doesn't look too bad. To be able to rebuild these boosters, you have to have the type that has the two-piece can on it that has basically like a little tab in here, and you're supposed to be able to rotate this to be able to separate the two halves of the can. You can see there's sort of a locking tab there, and as you rotate it this way, then the whole booster will come apart. Supposedly, anyways, we'll see. I initially put just like a screwdriver in here on the studs to see if I could get it to come loose, and that wasn't going to work, and I was worried about bending or breaking these studs. So in the instructions actually that came with the kit, and also in the Datsun manual, it shows a tool that they have. So I made up a quick tool right here, just some scrap metal I had. Welded it together with the bolt hole pattern and the hole in the middle for the booster, so we'll use that, and hopefully this thing will come apart. Alright, well, actually beating on it with a hammer and pulling on it at the same time, it's starting to move. I can see it's shifted a little bit, so we're going to continue and see how it goes. All right, well, I got it loose, but it took a lot of pounding with a hammer, and it came apart. Hopefully it didn't bend the studs or anything like that, but we'll pull it apart and see what it looks like inside. So, big spring inside that obviously it just popped right up. It's not too strong though, so it's not something I don't think that'll come shooting out. It's pretty, you can compress it pretty easily. So pull it apart. So we got the booster, the diaphragms in this side here, and then the big coil spring in here. Got lots of brake fluid or fluid inside the booster cavity here, but we did get it apart. So we'll clean it all up, and then I gotta blast the outside and clean up the outside and paint it, and then we'll put it back together, and then we'll test it and hopefully it works. All right, so now that we got the booster apart, there's basically three major parts. You have the front can with the studs on it where the master cylinder mounts. You have the rear can section with the rear studs on it. Then you have the centerpiece with the diaphragm and the push rod in it. Here's the diaphragm that came off. I don't see any issues with it, so I'm not sure if it was leaking around the shaft or if there's some pinholes in the diaphragm. We'll see, as we put it back together. There's a couple marks on it, so it might just have some pinholes in it somewhere. So the next piece you have to take apart is take the shaft out of here, and that's where there's a plunger inside. But the trick to it is there's a little key right here that just slides in, that like a fork shaped key that holds the shaft mechanism in here. And you have to get that out. So I've been working it back and forth a little bit with a screwdriver and some PB blaster just to try to get it loosened up, because there's nothing to grab it by and it doesn't stick out of the slot right here. So it basically said to, you know, sort of jiggle it and do things till it sort of works its way out. So I'm going to continue to do that and see if I can get it out, but it doesn't appear to be an easy piece to remove. All right, so I was working the screwdriver in here a little bit. This housing is plastic, so you have to be really careful that you don't damage that as well, but I kept kind of putting the screwdriver in and just sort of twisting it and kind of working on it a little bit, and I was able to get it to grab. And as you can see, the key will actually come out of here now, so you can just work it out, and then hopefully pull that out. So there's the key that's in there. There's nothing to grab it with, so just a little PB blaster and wiggling it around and kind of sticking a screwdriver down in there very carefully, because you don't want to, this is all plastic in here and there's not a lot of space, but it did come out, so that shit comes out. All right, so I think to get this end piece off, we'll take this cap off just by lightly prying around the edge of it. That'll get the end cap off. So there's the end cap coming off. There's the felt pad that's next in there. So the felt seal vent pad. All right, back working on the brake booster rebuild. One of the things that's in the middle of the booster is the operating rod. And this operating rod has a seal on it, and when it pushes in, it allows the vacuum to transfer from the front side of the diaphragm to the back side of the diaphragm. That's what gives you your brake boost. This operating rod has a seal on it, and the kit comes with a new seal, but it also comes with a set of instructions that say to send it off to Harman Classic Brakes. So you can send it off to them and they'll replace the seal, because the seal's rubber, but it actually has an embedded washer inside the rubber. So it looks like it might stretch over the rod, but it actually doesn't. You have to take the rod apart, and the end of the rod is swaged on. It's like a ball and socket joint, and it's swaged together. So you can see this is the operating rod. The seal actually goes right here on it in the spring. So we'll put the plunger in first, because there's a locking tab for that goes underneath, that's held in by the diaphragm. So that goes in there like that. And then this locking tab goes in here to hold the push rod assembly in. Like that. So it goes right in there, holds this in. Then the diaphragm goes on. definitely fits much tighter than the one I took off, so that's a good sign. So get it down in here so it's sealed all the way around, so that holds the locking plate in, and then it also keeps that from coming out. So the diaphragm's on. Then we'll put the seals in here, so you have this seal. So we'll just lube up the center of that. Actually, I'm gonna put some around the outer edges as well. And that goes down in here. That. And there's a locking ring that holds it in. So that's locked in place now, so the seal won't come out. See it from the back side. On the rear plunger, this vent piece goes down in there. It's like a vent filter. And then this cap goes on top. Just like that. Just give it a few taps to make sure it's in there. And then on this rear plate, same thing, there's a seal that goes in there. This is the old seal that came out. So we'll put some grease on this seal. All right, so the seal's in. It wasn't easy to get in there. The old one came out very easily. Then we have the locking ring that holds it in place, which I don't think this is really necessary on this seal, but we'll put it in. Just to make sure, so that locking ring's in there that holds the seal in. So probably doesn't need it based on how hard it was to get in there, but we'll put it in there and hope it doesn't come off. Let me just see if it's tight. Yeah, it's on pretty good, so I don't think it'll go anywhere. It's not gonna fall off. All right, so I'm lubing up the parts of the assembly before it goes back together. It said to put, lube on all the sealing surfaces of the diaphragm. So we'll get that lubed up, so hopefully when we tighten the cover down it doesn't tear. Because we don't want it to rip while we're squeezing it together for sure. I'm about out of grease. Back side is greased as well. All right, so got the diaphragm assembly, got the spring. I lubed up and put the push rod in because it doesn't want to stay in there when I tip it down. So I'm hoping I can get this in there, the spring in there, and the diaphragm, and get it all to go together. without losing my reaction disc, but it's already seeming wanting to come out of there, so we'll see what happens. So I'll put the spring in, put the diaphragm in, like that. Now I marked the housings so I can get them lined up and in the right place, hopefully. So got those marked. So let's see what happens. Well, so far it's not easy to get this in here with the spring on it. The diaphragm's kind of tight. It'd be nice to be able to put the diaphragm in first, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Having to go around and tuck the diaphragm in because it's kind of sticking out and catching on the locking tabs. Got it down in there. Let's see if it'll rotate now. Of course, my vise is rotating. It's not cooperating. All right. It is locked in there, so if we did it right, it won't leak. All right, so I got it together. My plunger looks like it's about the right distance. I didn't lose the reaction disc, and you can take this and compress the diaphragm so everything slides well. So now we just have to vacuum test it and see if it leaks or not. All right, we got a vacuum tester hooked up to the booster, so let's see if we can pump it up, see if it'll hold any vacuum. You can see it's drawing a vacuum on it. That's a good sign. So we'll get it up to 10 millimeters of mercury, and we'll see if it holds. So it's holding vacuum, so it doesn't leak. That's good. It's a good sign. So I think we got a working brake booster. All right, so there we have the assembled brake booster. I have a 15/16 master cylinder on it for the disc brake conversion I have. Got the boot on, got the clevis on. I'll need to adjust that. I checked the push rod length coming out of the booster into the master cylinder, and that was within specification in the manual, which is 3.5 to 4 millimeters past the face of the flange here. So now we'll just put it in the car. I'm going to put some sealer around here. The original one had some sealer. The older cars had a gasket, but the larger 8.5-inch boosters don't. But there was some sealer on there, so I'll put some sealer on it when I put it back in. Alright, so got the clutch master cylinder in, the brake master cylinder in, so you can see it's all sitting down in there. So now I just have to work on the brake lines. I'm going to put a proportioning valve in there because I have the disc brakes on the rear. I'll probably have to fabricate some new lines, so that'll be next.